Artificers are a class in D&D that are kind of like wizards who decided to forsake using spellbooks in favor of infusing and tinkering with magic items and using firearms. Essentially, like other half-casters, their ability to cast spells is more for utility than as a main option for them. Some of the feats in this video might work for a more generalist build, while others might fit certain subclasses more than others. So with that being said, let's get started. And starting off at number 10, we have Tough from the Player's Handbook. This is a simple feat that gives you more hit points. Specifically, it grants you twice your level in hit points whenever you take this feat, and an additional 2 hit points for every level you gain afterwards. So at level 4, you instantly gain 8 hit points, then an additional 2 every level after for a grand total of 40 extra hit points by the time you reach 20th level. This is an excellent feat for pretty much any character, as it means you just last a lot longer in combat than if you didn't take Tough. And since the hit points this feat grants is retroactive, you don't have to worry about taking this feat too early or too late, as you would gain the appropriate number of extra hit points whether you chose to take this feat at 19th level or 4th level. Artificer is no different when it comes to how useful Tough can be for them. Being able to survive an extra hit or two can mean the difference between winning and losing a combat. However, Tough does hold a bit of unique synergy with the Armorer subclass. To briefly go over the subclass, you essentially gain a set of arcane armor that works akin to an Iron Man suit, where you can don and doff it as an action, as well as change the functionality of it based on the situation whenever you've finished a short or long rest. You also gain proficiency in heavy armor, which is important to note because the arcane armor allows you to ignore the strength requirement of wearing armor. The arcane armor also comes with benefits such as allowing you to use the armor as an arcane focus for your artificer spells. Additionally, the armor can't be removed against your will, expands to cover your entire body, replaces any missing limbs, and comes with a neat bonus action that lets you retract or deploy a helmet as desired. In terms of functionality, there are 2 modes you can set your armor in: Guardian and Infiltration. Guardian grants you a set of thunder gauntlets that count as simple melee weapons that deal 1d8 thunder damage each time you hit with them. You also gain a bonus action Defensive Field that grants you temporary hit points equal to your artificer level, and you can use this feature a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. Meanwhile, Infiltrator has a heavier focus on stealth-based situations by granting you advantage on stealth checks and an increased walking speed of 5 feet. You also gain a lightning launcher that has a range of 90 to 300 feet and deals 1d6 lightning damage on hit. However, you can also deal an additional 1d6 lightning damage on hit once per turn. As for what the synergy between the subclass and Tough is, let's backtrack a little bit to Guardian. Their Thunder Gauntlets are pretty decent weapons, sporting 1d8 of a damage type that is rarely resisted. However, there is an additional effect which we haven't mentioned yet. Whenever you hit a creature with these gauntlets, they gain disadvantage on attack rolls against any target other than yourself until the start of your next turn. This is an amazing way to draw away enemy attention from other players and onto yourself by discouraging them from attacking anyone else other than you. And since you're technically dual wielding these gauntlets and gain extra attack at 5th level, you can effectively hit up to 3 different targets, 2 from extra attack and 1 as a bonus action attack, and incentivize them all to attack you instead of going for your backline. So having extra hit points from Tough is an excellent way to ensure that you not only stay alive longer in combat in general, but it also helps to ensure that you actually take a hit if something does manage to focus their attention onto you, especially if you're going to make liberal use out of your gauntlets. Tough is an excellent general feat to have, and is made slightly more uniquely useful for Artificers, which is why Tough takes number 10 spot on this list, as it sets the bar for future entries on the list. And at number 9, we have the Resilient feat from the PHB. Resilient is basically every caster's dream feat, as it allows you to increase any one of your stats by 1 to a max of 20, and gain proficiency in saving throws for that stat. While most spellcasters would take this feat to gain advantage in Constitution saving throws for better concentration checks, Artificers actually have no need to take Constitution since they're already proficient in those kinds of saves. Instead, Artificers may opt for Wisdom since many higher level creatures tend to target Wisdom more than other stats. This doesn't mean that Wisdom is the superior stat to take as an Artificer, of course. Some campaigns might happen to use Charisma-based saving throws more often, so you might choose to gain proficiency in Charisma saves instead. Whatever the case, what makes Resilient so good for Artificers is due to this feat's synergy with Flash of Genius. Flash of Genius lets you use your reaction to give yourself a flat bonus to any ability check or saving throw you make equal to your intelligence modifier. So an 8th level Artificer that took Resilient for Wisdom and had a 20 intelligence stat would have a potential +8 bonus to their Wisdom saves, assuming a 10 Wisdom stat with no extra bonuses, which is insane when you put it into perspective like that. Resilient in general is also a great feat to take anytime since it scales with your proficiency bonus, so it only gets better over the course of a campaign. As for why this feat takes number 9 on this list, well, it's an extremely simple feat that does one thing and does it well, while also being versatile enough to allow a bit of flexibility, and how you want Resilient to support you. Combine that with how well it synergizes with Flash of Genius, and you have an excellent source of self-sustain against saving throws, which can be just as important as taking more hits than tough, since reducing damage and dodging crowd control effects is also an important part of survival in D&D. And at number 8, we have Squire of Solamnia from the Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen Adventure module. This is a feat which gives you a minor benefit to mountain creatures by allowing you to saddle up using only 5 feet of your movement rather than half of your total movement. However, and more importantly, this feat gives you Precise Strike, an on-demand advantage switch that you can turn on once per turn, whenever you make a weapon attack roll against a creature. On hit, the attack deals an additional 1d8 bonus damage of the weapon's type. You can do this a number of times per long rest equal to your proficiency bonus, and what's more is that you can only ever expend a charge whenever you land a hit. So there's no risk in losing these charges, even if you have disadvantage, and you use the Precise Strike feature to negate the disadvantage. Squire of Solamnia is one of those feats that can be considered very powerful, simply because it's one of the few ways in the game that allows you to give yourself advantage on an attack without fulfilling any sort of condition. You just say you're going to activate the Precise Strike feature when you make your attack, and that's it. Giving yourself advantage whenever you want is great for rogues, for example, because it helps them proc sneak attack when they can't, or don't want to use steady aim, or just have no one around to provide them with their sneak attack. While Artificers don't really make use of Squire Solamnia in the same way that other classes do, giving yourself advantage on your musket or pistol shot can be very useful, given the fact that they can only be fired once a turn unless you have extra attack, and a way to ignore the loading property of your firearms, such as through the repeating shot Artificer Infusion, which allows you to do just that. This feat also works with the armor subclass Thunder Gauntlets and Lightning Launcher, since they are both classified as simple weapons. And if you happen to hit a creature using your Lightning Launcher while calling for a Precise Strike, you can deal 1d6 lightning damage for the attack, another 1d6 for the once per turn bonus damage on hit, and then another 1d8 extra damage for the Precise Strike, for a total of 2d6 plus 1d8 plus your intelligence modifier and lightning damage for a single attack. And since this feat does give you advantage, you also have a slightly higher chance to land a critical hit, potentially resulting in more damage. Unfortunately, part of why this feat can't be any higher than the number 8 spot on this list is because it's technically locked behind an adventure module. While classes other than Paladin and Fighter can most certainly obtain this feat, with the help of the DM, this is one of those feats that may or may not be implemented. Another reason is because this feat doesn't have very many unique synergies for every subclass, and because Artillerist Artificers can't make use of this feat with their Eldritch Cannon, since it's not classified as a weapon, and Alchemists don't rely on anything other than whatever weapon they're currently holding. Battlesmith, meanwhile, can't apply this feat to their Steel Defender, which makes sense given that it's basically a companion akin to a Beastmaster Ranger companion. Still, having advantage on your basic firearms that deal 1d10 or 1d12 piercing damage, depending on whether you're using a pistol or a musket, is good on its own. And being able to give yourself advantage pretty much any time you need it is a powerful enough effect that it still ranks higher than the previous 2 entries on this list. And at number 7, we have Elemental Adept from the PHB. This feat allows you to choose a damage type ranging from acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder, and lets your spells ignore creatures' resistance to that type of damage. You can only select one of these damage types when selecting this feat, but you can select the feat multiple times for multiple damage types. Additionally, any one you roll when rolling damage for a spell that you cast can be treated as 2 instead, effectively raising the damage floor of spells that deal that kind of damage. For instance, Scorching Ray deals 2 to 12 fire damage per ray, since each ray deals 2d6 damage, for a total of 6 to 36 fire damage if all 3 rays hit. With Elemental Adept, each ray instead deals 4 to 12 fire damage per ray, resulting in a grand total of 12 to 36 damage. If we look at bigger spells, Fireball, the effect is even more apparent. The 8 to 48 fire damage essentially becomes 16 to 48 fire damage, meaning your fireballs will always be dealing decent damage, even if a creature successfully passes their dexterity saving throw to only take half that damage. All in all, Elemental Adept is great for spellcasters that want to specialize in specific damage types without having to worry about whether a creature resists their strongest spells or not. Artificers are no different, as their spell list tends to borrow a lot from wizards amongst others. Artillerists gain access to Fireball, Cone of Cold, and Shatter. Alchemists gain access to Flaming Sphere, Melf's Acid Arrow, and Cloud Kill. Armorer has Lightning Bolt and Thunder Wave, and Battlesmith gets Fire Shield. However, they all get excellent options for damage spells shared amongst themselves, as you might expect. Booming Blade is a cantrip that has the potential to deal insane amounts of thunder damage. Heat Metal is a second level spell that only Druids, Bards, Artificers, and Forged Domain Clerics get, which deal 2d8 guaranteed fire damage when you cast it, and lets you use your bonus action to deal that damage again, amongst other things it can do. Ashardalon Stride is a third level spell that also deals fire damage when walking past an enemy, but also grants you other effects like increased movement speed and the ability to not provoke opportunity attacks from moving. But while there are plenty of ways to make use of Elemental Adept, the reason it can't be higher in this list is because Artificers don't always need to use their spells. A lot of the time, Artificers can get by using their class features and their firearm for damage. Instead, it can be more useful to opt for supportive spells like Web, Featherfall, or Haste, especially since Artificers have so few spell slots. That being said, there is a case to be made for Artillerists for their access to huge spells like Fireball, or even Alchemists for their access to Flaming Sphere, since Flaming Sphere is a concentration spell which has the potential to deal fire damage to things every turn, and gives you something to do with your bonus action. It's a shame that Elemental Adept only works on spells, so Armorer can't use this feat with their Thunder Gauntlets or Lightning Launcher. Otherwise, this feat would be a lot higher on this list. And at number 6, we have Adept of the Red Robes from Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen. This is a feat that can only be acquired by first taking the Initiative High Sorcery feat while choosing Lunitari as your choice of moon. Initiate of High Sorcery itself is a feat that grants you 2 free spells that you choose based on whatever moon you select when taking the feat. There are 3 moons for you to choose from. Nuitari, which lets you choose 2 spells between Dissonant Whispers, False Life, Hex, and Ray of Sickness. Lunitari, which grants you 2 spells of your choice between Color Spray, Disguise Self, Featherfall, and Longstrider. And Solinari, giving you 2 choices between Comprehend Languages, Detect Evil and Good, Protection from Evil and Good, and Shield. When you learn these spells, you're able to cast them for free without expending a spell slot once per long rest. And if you already use your free casting of it, you can also expend a spell slot like normal. Just like with Squire of Solamnia, this feat technically requires you to either be one of 2 classes, Sorcerer or Wizard in this case, or be a Mage of High Sorcery, which isn't impossible by any means, just a bit tough to obtain if you aren't running Mage of High Sorcery as part of your background already. However, just like most things in the game, the Mage of High Sorcery requirement can be flavored to work with your campaign setting, rather than just being tied to the module it comes from. That being said, free spells are always good to have, especially when they come from a feat. Unfortunately, Initiate of High Sorcery taken in this way doesn't really provide the Artificer with anything new they can't already take, except for Color Spray. But a free casting of the other spells can be pretty useful at times too. This brings us to the Adept of the Red Robes, and why it might be worth taking 2 feats for, instead of 1. This feat grants you a free casting of 1 second level spell of your choice, and it must come from either the Illusion or Transmutation School of Magic. Just like before, you can also expend your own spell slots after casting the spell for free, and you gain the free casting back after a long rest. More importantly, however, you learn Magical Balance, a feature of Adept of the Red Robes that allows you to, proficiency times per long rest, to treat an attack roll or ability check you make as a 10 if you rolled 9 or lower on the d20. Before, we stated that Squire of Solamnia didn't really have much in way of synergies when it came to Artificers in general. With Adept of the Red Robes, however, the opposite is true. It works very well with every Artificer subclass due to one class feature they all share, which is a Flash of Genius. There's no worse feeling in the world than wanting to succeed on an important ability check, only to roll a nat 1. With this feat, you can turn that nat 1 into a nat 10 before applying any bonuses to that roll. So if you rolled a 1 in Arcane check and use Magical Balance, and have a 20 Intelligence stat, that roll becomes a 15 under normal circumstances. But with Flash of Genius, that roll then becomes a 20 total since it allows you to add your Intelligence modifier again. And that's assuming you aren't proficient in Arcana in the first place. What this means is that, at any given time, whenever you make an ability check, you can just give your roll a huge boost whenever you want, so long as you roll below a 10. Manipulating your own roll is already a huge leap in power. The Lucky feat, for instance, allows you to basically ignore the rules for having disadvantage by letting you choose the higher number regardless. And Silvery Barbs is a first level spell that forces your opponent to reroll their d20 and use that lower roll, while granting you or an ally advantage on your next d20 roll. So, while Flash of Genius wouldn't be able to work with your attack rolls that you activate Magical Balance with, the immense power being able to add your full Intelligence modifier to a minimum roll of 10 whenever you feel like it is the reason why this feat takes a higher spot on this list than Squire of Solamnia. The obvious flaw of this feat, however, is the fact that you do have to take a weaker feat for this class before taking this one, which is what keeps Adept of the Red Robes at the number 6 spot on this list and no higher. And at number 5, we have Elven Accuracy from the PHB. This feat basically gives you double advantage by allowing you to reroll one of your dice whenever you make an attack roll with advantage using Dexterity, Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma. Additionally, this gives you half an ability score increase by letting you choose Dexterity, Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma, and raising the chosen stat by 1 to a max of 20. This is great as a general feat to give your Artificer for a couple of reasons. The first is, having an even greater chance to hit or land crits than normal is always incredibly powerful when it comes to combat. The other part is that Artificers have the added benefit of being able to make attacks using Dexterity or Intelligence for the most part. Since Artificers are able to make good use of firearms, Elven Accuracy would be able to proc from both their gun and whatever spell attack roll they end up making. Armorer and Battlesmith Artificers especially get to make all of their attack rolls using the Intelligence stat in place of Strength or Dexterity, which makes this feat even easier to use. Another funny synergy this feat has is with the Artillerist Eldritch Cannon, which counts as a magical object, not a creature. With how this feature is worded, whenever you use one of its effects, such as the Force Ballista, the Artificer is the one making the attack roll. That attack is just originating from the cannon itself. This means that whenever you make a ranged spell attack using the Force Ballista on your Eldritch Cannon and you have advantage, it would benefit from Elven Accuracy since your spell attacks are made using your Intelligence stat, which fulfills the requirement of this feat. And if you end up combining this feat with something like Squire of Solamnia that allows you to give yourself advantage whenever, then Elven Accuracy can really shine hard overall. While Artificers may not be able to easily grant themselves advantage consistently without any help, this feat is powerful enough that even the occasional advantage on your attack rolls could still make this feat worth it, simply due to how high your chances to hit or crit end up being at the end of the day. Unfortunately, despite how strong this feat is, the reason it only takes number 5 on this list is due to the fact that you have to be playing an elf or half-elf race in order to even take this feat in the first place. Unlike feats such as Squire of Solamnia, where you might technically be able to acquire it through gameplay, the choice to take Elven Accuracy isn't usually a thought in a player's head unless they are either looking at the feat already or have already created an elf or a half-elf at the beginning of the campaign. Some players might want to play a different race entirely, which would, unfortunately, lock them out of this feat. So Elven Accuracy, despite how great it can be, sits at the comfortable number 5 spot on this list. And at number 4, we have Sharpshooter from the PHB. This feat grants you the benefit of allowing all of your range attacks to fire normally at full range, rather than only penalizing you with disadvantage for firing beyond a weapon's normal range. This means that a longbow, which has a normal range of 150 feet and a long range of 600 feet, will just have a range of 600 feet, which is 4 times the amount of coverage you would normally have with a longbow. And if that weren't enough, this feat also allows your ranged weapon attacks to ignore half and 3/4 cover, meaning enemies won't be able to benefit from having +2 or +5 AC respectively due to taking cover. They would have to take total cover and completely break your line of sight, basically. But the most important part of this feat is its ability to allow yourself to forsake some accuracy on any of your ranged weapon attacks that you're proficient with by taking a -5 penalty to the attack roll, and then gain a flat 10+ damage in return. This feat is especially useful for an Armorer's Artificer's lightning launcher, since it does count as a simple ranged weapon, meaning it can very easily benefit from Sharpshooter for some really solid lightning damage, which is a synergy you wouldn't be able to get with any other class. In general, however, this feat works well with an Artificer's firearms, if they choose to use them, that is. The biggest downside of this feat, however, is the fact that the benefit of taking a -5 penalty to your accuracy for more damage isn't really favorable to take at low levels, where your accuracy is already pretty bad by default. But all the other benefits provided by Sharpshooter can still be rather useful, since ignoring cover just means that your opponent is that much easier to hit throughout the course of a campaign. And once you reach higher levels and obtain some magical abilities that grant you bonuses to hit, the -5 penalty eventually becomes negligible. And if you were to combine this feat with something like Fighter Initiate for the archery fighting style, then this penalty might as well be a -3 rather than a -5, since archery grants you a bonus of +2 to all of your range attack rolls. Overall, this is an excellent feat to take since a +10 damage to all your ranged weapon attacks is a huge upgrade, and a great way to keep your damage in line with your other high DPS classes that your party might be running with. Or to just supplement your own damage by allowing yourself to hit things even harder in general if you are the highest damaging player on the table. As for why Sharpshooter takes number 4 in this list, it's mostly due to the aforementioned penalty being so crippling at lower levels. If it weren't for that, then this feat would definitely reach a higher spot on this list. However, the other benefits of this feat are still good enough at lower levels that it's not such a terrible pick even if you got a free first level feat by any available means, such as through a house rule or simply rolling a variant human or custom lineage. And at number 3, we have Skill Expert from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. This feat grants you a half ASI that lets you increase any of your ability scores by 1 to a max of 20. Along with that, you gain proficiency in one skill of your choice, and if you're already proficient in a skill, you gain expertise in that skill, which allows you to double your proficiency bonus whenever you make an ability check with that particular skill. So, if your proficiency is a +3, and you took Skill Expert to make yourself expertise in Arcana, you would have a +6 to any Arcana check you make along with your intelligence bonus as usual. This is another one of those feats that benefits greatly from the Artificer's Flash of Genius class feature, but in a much more impactful way. While Adept of the Red Robes definitely helps you balance out your poor rolls for any given ability check, Skill Expert allows you to double down on the ability checks you're already good with. Sometimes this matters a lot more than being okay at everything, since your party should consist of characters that are diverse in many skills, though this doesn't always have to be the case. But having expertise in Arcana, for example, can really benefit your team greatly, especially if they've all dumpstered their intelligence for another useful stat. By default, with the +3 proficiency bonus being doubled to +6 and an intelligence stat of 20 for a +5 modifier, your Arcana checks would be at a +11. And if you want to ensure that you don't fail, activating Flash of Genius would grant you another +5 bonus to that check, making it effectively a +16 bonus, which is acceptable when you're the only one who can make a decent Arcana check in the party. Of course, this can also apply to other checks as well. One of the benefits you get from Infiltrator mode from the Armorer subclass is the ability to ignore having disadvantage on stealth checks while you're wearing your arcane armor, assuming the armor you're wearing would bestow disadvantage by wearing it, like with full plate armor. Having expertise and using Flash of Genius on a stealth check that you don't want to fail is a great way to sneak around in heavy armor without doing anything special. What makes this skill so great for Artificers is just how versatile the feat is. You can increase any of your ability scores by 1, and you can either gain proficiency in a skill you don't already have while gaining expertise in one you use normally, or simply double down on a skill you don't already have. So, if you aren't already proficient in perception checks, you can take Skill Expert to not only gain proficiency in it, but also gain expertise in it, which is just a huge increase in general. Skilled is also a good alternative to this feat if you're looking for more skills to use in general, since it lets you gain proficiency in any combination of 3 skills or tools of your choice. But Skill Expert has the edge over Skilled due to being able to also grant yourself half an ability score increase, and double down on a skill that you're already good at to begin with, which is why Skill Expert takes number 3 on this list and not Skilled. And at number 2, we have Fey Touched from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. This feat allows you to increase your choice of either your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma score by 1 to a max of 20, and teaches you how to cast Misty Step and 1 first level spell of your choice that comes from the divination or enchantment schools of magic, for free once per long rest, that you can also cast by using one of your own spell slots afterwards. While there are plenty of feats that grant you similar effects, Fey Touch stands out from the rest due to how versatile the list of spells it grants you is in comparison. And being able to cast spells for free is basically a godsend for half casters like Artificers, with Misty Step being one of the best spells to use for mobility, as it is a 2nd level spell that only uses a bonus action to cast and moves you up to 30 feet to an unoccupied space that you can see. As for 1st level spells that you can learn from this feat, there are plenty that an Artificer can make use of that aren't available to them. Bless is a concentration spell that allows you to give up to 3 creatures of your choice within 30 feet of you a bonus to all of their attack rolls or saving throws equal to 1d4 for up to 1 minute. Heroism can provide some survivability by making you or a creature you touch immune to being frightened, while also providing temporary hit points equal to your spellcasting ability modifier at the start of each of the affected creature's turn for up to 1 minute, so long as you maintain concentration. Hex is another excellent concentration spell, which lets you deal an extra 1d6 necrotic damage each time you deal damage to the marked creature, as well as give them disadvantage on any ability check they make, which is dependent on a stat that you choose when hexing them. And of course, there's also good old Silvery Barbs, which you've already discussed how great that spell is. While there aren't many spells that synergize in any unique way with the Artificer subclass, Fey Touch is a very powerful feat that almost any class can benefit from, which is why it takes the number 2 spot on this list. It's just really that good of a feat, especially for a class that doesn't get to have as many spell slots as, say, a wizard or sorcerer. And at number 1, we have Warcaster. This feat comes from the PHB and grants you 3 benefits. The first and most important benefit is being able to have advantage on your concentration saves, which you can already roll well on due to your innate proficiency in constitution saving throws as an Artificer. You can also perform somatic components of spells even when you have weapons or a shield in one or both hands, which isn't as necessary for most Artificers, especially armor Artificers using Thunder Gauntlets, since your hands are already free despite technically wielding 2 weapons. As for the third benefit, it allows you to cast a spell that costs 1 action to cast and must target that creature in place of an opportunity attack whenever a creature provokes one from you. This can be a great way to cast something like Booming Blade in order to deal a ton of thunder damage in a single attack, or force a creature to keep their focus on you, or else take additional thunder damage from moving. This can also be a great way to pull off some crowd control spells that you otherwise would not want to use on your turn simply due to action economy. Unfortunately, the Artificer is extremely limited in terms of what kind of crowd control options they have available to them that aren't cantrips. They mostly have spells that they can use to buff themselves or their allies instead. But what makes Warcaster so great on Artificer is due to how hard it would be for your DM to break your concentration on spells. And they have a lot of them. Fly, Haste, Web, Bixby's Hand, Animate Objects, and Heat Metal are all perfect examples of excellent spells for an Artificer to concentrate on. But the list doesn't stop there. Not having to worry about your concentration being broken while focusing on the strengths of whatever subclass you're playing is why this feat is so strong, even if we only really benefit from one of its features. And that's not to mention how it combos with the MVP of this list, Flash of Genius, which can be applied to saving throws as well, which includes concentration checks. An Artificer with a +5 intelligence modifier and a +3 constitution modifier at 8th level, for that +3 proficiency bonus, for instance, would have a +11 to any concentration check they make if they activate their Flash of Genius, which guarantees you to successfully make any concentration check whenever you take anything less than 24 damage, since the DC of concentration checks is equal to 10 or half the damage you take, whichever ends up being higher. And with Warcaster, you make the roll with advantage, allowing you to have a pretty good chance at maintaining your concentration on whatever spell you're sustaining if you end up taking more than 24 damage or have run out of charges of Flash of Genius for the day. Having to not worry about losing your concentration is every spellcaster's dream. That, outside of sorcerers, all have to take 2 feats to gain the same benefit: Resilient for Constitution saving throws and Warcaster. However, the Artificer's access to Flash of Genius propels the power of Warcaster to such a high degree that it has to take the #1 spot on this list.